So much of my life and who I am today has been shaped and molded by the folks we see here and those who came before me. A very loving and crazy family, friends who have lifted me up and shown me grace far more times than I deserve, mentors who have shared countless insight and wisdom over the years, and even, if you can believe it, the not 5, not 10, not 20, but 37 total teammates I've had throughout my years in this organization. And even the many strangers who became close friends. Now, all this to say, I can take very little credit for where and who I am today, because in all reality, I've lived a fairly short life. What has made it special, though, are the many passing seasons of my life that have been filled with very humble people. Everyday people just like you and me, but the kind of humble people we know who look for ways to serve, hear out our hearts, and share loving wisdom even when we don't think that we need it. Now, we can all think of at least one really great example of humility in our lives, someone we've seen firsthand go out of their way to sacrificially set themselves aside, to be there for you, to love you, greet you at the door with a smile and a big hug. They're probably watching this with you right now. They're the best examples of humility, and that is why dogs are awesome. No, I'm kidding. No, it's the teachers, it's the best friends, it's the students, parents, a stranger, literally any everyday person. The point is, all these people have this shared theme woven in between all of them that connects them, and this theme is humility. Now, we can resort to Webster's and say humility is this, and it's defined as that, and its origin is whatever, and blah, 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 blah. But what if we saw humility as something more than words on a paper? What if it were a lifestyle, where these words would gently lift from their page and set into our heart? And suddenly, everything that we did in our life would be an expression of that. Our heart would be to our hands, and we would look for ways to humbly serve the people around us. Our heart would be to our eyes and to our mind, and we would be able to humble the perceptions and judgments that we make upon those people that we meet every day. What if we simplified humility and just said humility is a willingness to be known for who we really are? The time that we share together today is going to feel a little radical, so much so we'll walk away not thinking more of ourselves, yes, but also, this is important, not thinking less of ourselves, but rather just meeting in the middle and just thinking about ourselves less. What do I mean by that? How can we do it? We can choose humility, make it a lifestyle, and be known for who we really are. Now, throughout the past decade, there have been countless studies correlating humility to living a more content and joy-filled life. And our brain, folks, is naturally hardwired to attach itself to the things that bring us the most joy from when we're young and it's basic survival to when we become older. And we have preferences towards things like where we like to go out to eat, what is our favorite music, do we like country or pop Taylor Swift better? This happens at literally every stage of development. And even in my life now, I saw this beautiful correlation between joy and humility at one of my favorite places in the entire world. It is a place that brings me a lot of joy often, a hotel. And I'll explain why I love hotels so much in just a minute. But in a normal year, the team and I would be on the road all over the country staying at a substantial amount of hotels, but none more than the Homewood Suites in Indianapolis, Indiana. And that is kind of the reason I do love hotels so much, is that place. Think of it this way. It's your own space. You can create sick forts whenever you want to. Someone cleans up after you, and the floor is lava 100% of the time. I told myself one early Saturday morning at this hotel that I was going to stay in. We had a big conference coming up the next week. I want to be completely prepared, but unfortunately, I found myself locked outside of my hotel room. Happened 100 times. So I called the manager. She comes down. She swipes her special key card a few times. It takes a few minutes, but eventually I'm able to get inside of my hotel room. And then she nods to the door handle and says, "Don't worry, we'll get that taken care of." Well, she wasn't joking, because I kid you not, it wasn't 15 minutes later. I'm standing just inside the door of my hotel room. I'm going through the refrigerator. I'm snacking. I'm trying to find some goods. And then I hear some scratching coming from somewhere in the room. I ignore it initially, but then I hear a beep. And out of nowhere, like the Kool-Aid man himself is in town, my front door gets kicked in. And in shock, I drop all the things in my hand. The snacks go everywhere. I look up in shock, and in place of a large red pitcher, we have standing in the doorway at 5 foot tall, a later-aged gentleman donning a rugged leather tool belt packed full to the brim, a gray polo that says Homewood Suites, and whitewashed carpenter jeans. It was none other than the Homewood Suites chief engineer, Russell. Russell greeted me with a Midwestern classic. It was music to my ears. Oh, my apologies there. I thought this room was vacant. As a Midwesterner myself, I responded in our shared language with, yeah, no, yeah. That's Midwesterner for, hi, sir. Yes, unfortunately, this room is occupied. It's great to meet you, too. And then in a surprisingly gentle voice, he says, I'm here to fix the door, which was true. Russell was there to fix the door. But more than just do his job, he would ask me questions about my life. He'd ask if I was doing okay and if my family was healthy. Then he would go around the room and he would say, hey, are you comfortable? Do you feel safe here staying at the Homewood? And then, to my amazement, still, he said, I'm here. What can I do to serve you? I was absolutely blown away at the humility of this man and the way, though he didn't have to, but the way he chose to treat me at the time, a complete stranger. And I'll level with you. I know it sounds odd that I would remember the exact words of a stranger, but I vividly remember that day. As he left the hotel room, I ran into my bedroom and I grabbed a notebook that I had from the FFA Center that day. I opened it up to the nearest page and I wrote down everything that I could remember from our conversation. I don't journal, so this was a pretty big deal for me. And I wrote down all of it, and the words that I put in that journal have since to this day been the words etched into my mind. He paused in our conversation. He said, what was your name again, sir? Kolesen. Kolesen, I want you to know something. You matter to me, and I care about you. That's not a sales pitch. Sure, you pay my bills, but that's not what I come here every day for. And he says this, and this is important. He says, I wake up every day, and I show people who I am by meeting them where they are. Russell shows people who he is by meeting them where they are. For him, these words left their page. The most important thing that he could commit himself to was not his job. It wasn't a concept. It wasn't a definition. It was this lifestyle, AKA a daily choice. Russell said, I wake up every day and show people who I am. And talking to him, I was just completely blown away at the humility of this man. And he understood that humility cannot be limited to just one day or just one action. Humility has to be something that we live. Now, if you're like me and you see this, you're thinking, well, shoot dang, grab the Krispy Kreme donuts because I have no idea how I'm supposed to live out humility. Well, good news for you and me, Russell breaks this down perfectly. Russell says, I wake up every day and I show people who I am. How do you do that, Russell? By meeting them where they are. The question now stands, how do we meet people where they are? For Russell, this was a very literal action. In fact, we went on to share conversation a lot about his personal life, too, and how sometimes it was so stressful and it was so overwhelming that he'd find himself alone in his office there at the Homewood, just completely stressed out and breaking down. And that was a lot for me to take in at that moment. It was a lot. But it was in sharing completely who he was that he was able to love and serve the people around him in that hotel so well. Because of his willingness to let that part of his life be known, the not so pretty, the not so polished, or maybe just the human parts of his life be known, Russell was never far out of reach. He was so down to earth. He knew if he couldn't connect with anybody and anything else, he could at least connect with their humanity. And every day that Russell chose to do this, he met people where they were. And in turn, humility was always lived. Now, being vulnerable and being open with us is one example of how we can meet people where they are. That's just the approach that Russell took. But it can look different for us as well. It can look like a parent stepping down from their computer or laptop to play or speak with their child. That's meeting someone where they are. It can look like us turning to a friend and say, hey, how are you doing at home? How are things there? How are you doing emotionally? How are you doing physically? And perhaps sharing our heart on that as well. Maybe we're stressed out because of the burden of homework and the cherry on top of 2020, which is technology issues. And we're just like, I'm done. I don't want to do anything with that anymore, which don't get me wrong. Those emotions have their place. Give them the space they deserve. But when we find ourselves in the right head and heart space, we're able to still in that moment reach out to our teachers, reach out to our advisors and say, hey, I see what you're doing. I know it's tough. I'm here for you. You are known. You're appreciated. I just want to say thank you. It's been tough for us all. That's meeting someone where they are. And perhaps, and this is a tough one, we choose to take a loss. And we don't like the sound of that at all. I don't like the sound of that. It sounds like we're losing something, right? But we choose to take a loss, and instead of being right in an argument, we decide, you know what? I am going to show grace to my opponent. These things, though not always easy, they are attainable. They are attainable. And whenever we choose in our life to commit ourselves to them, we will always meet people where they are, in being vulnerable or looking for ways to serve them. And in turn, humility will always be lived. Now, with that, we remember that Russell wasn't always amazing at doing this. In fact, he never said that he did it perfectly. And the interesting thing is often what we remember from meeting a truly humble person is how imperfectly they use what they are good at to meet people where they are. Like Russell, who was amazing at fixing things, used that as a means to love and serve the people around him in that hotel so well. During a virtual conference this summer, I met a regional officer who was amazing at what she did well, but took the gifts that she had and used them with incredible humility. Emily Sanderson, right here in the great Lone Star State of Texas. And I sent out a message early that morning of the conference asking if anyone would be willing to put together a few short videos, just clips to fellow FFA members. It was their peers. And keep in mind, it's like 7, 8 o'clock in the morning in some parts of Texas. But boom, my phone goes off like that. I open it up, I look at it, and I realize it's an unknown number from Texas. Emily Sanderson, happy to help in any way that she can. Now, we went on to share conversation completely unrelated to the task that I had assigned her. Much like Russell, our conversation was so much more than a job. But it's important to preface the task that I did assign her was to share words of affirmation with fellow FFA members and her peers. And as soon as I shared that with her, Emily just perks up like that. She's excited. She's like, oh, yes, I love sharing words of affirmation. Thank you so much. And then, to no surprise, a couple minutes later, she's saying things like, hey, Kolesen, in our private conversation, I'm proud of you. You're doing a good job. Keep up the good work. I'm rooting for you and who you are this year. And I was blown away at the humility of this girl and how she chose to treat me, also at that time, a stranger too. And we're just going to pause for a moment because Emily does two things without even realizing it because it comes so natural to her, but is crucial for us understanding this concept of humility and what it means in our life. Emily recognized her strengths. I love sharing words of affirmation, and she acted upon them. I'm proud of you, Kolesen. Keep up the good work. She created those short videos. Humility always recognizes strengths and acts upon it. Often, what we think, since we're talking about this topic of humility, we have to take anything that we are remotely good at, sweep it up underneath the rug, and it's there to stay for the rest of eternity. And it's kind of like when you're pouring a bowl of cereal in the morning, that one Fruit Loop that falls on the ground. Are you going to pick it up? Is Mom going to pick it up? Nah, you're kicking that bad boy right up underneath the refrigerator, never to be spoken of again. But this could not be further from the truth when it comes to our strengths and humility. Let's look at the example of Fred Rogers. And no, moviegoers, I'm not talking about the Tom Hanks Mr. Rogers. I mean the real-life Fred Rogers. Fred held this platform that spoke to millions of children around the world. And he knew with that privilege, he therefore had a responsibility to use his strengths as a means to convey a message of hope and kindness to everyone that listened in. Fred always understood the power of his position. In fact, he would say, it's our job to encourage each other to discover our uniqueness and find ways of developing its expression. It is humble to recognize the strengths that you have. If it's to serve, get out there and serve, y'all. And if it's to teach, teachers, go teach. Go teach. If it's just to give encouragement, then get out there and give encouragement. If it's to lead, lead diligently. If it's to show mercy, like to our opponent, then show it cheerfully. The hand is not greater than the foot. We all have something so unique and so beautiful that comes together to create something powerful. Own your strengths. We all have different ones. Emily's allows her to affirm. Russell's allows him to fix. So what do we do with that knowledge? Let's lift up each other's strengths and encourage action. We literally have the ability to inspire the people around us, to take what we are innately good at, to serve the people around us and make the world a better place. Maybe we just need to take some notes from Emily and share some words of affirmation. Maybe we need to get right up in their face and say, you know what, you're the most kind and loving person I've ever met in my life. Have you considered going into public health? Or maybe we just take a softer and more gentle approach. Perhaps that could be more loving too. And we just write them a note. And we say, the way that you organized last week's meeting was phenomenal. You're good at what you do well. Keep up the good job. Little things, but they go a really, really long way. The most accurate reflection of humility is not thinking less of ourselves or of what we have. It's recognizing our strengths. It's recognizing our privileges. It's recognizing our worth and saying, what can I do with what I have been blessed with to therefore bless the lives of others around me? Because humility always recognizes strength and acts upon it. Now, come with me on this final journey here. Let's take everything that we came with in this conversation, just set it aside for a second, jacket included, and let's just speak to the humanity that both you and I share. Let's speak to that humanity. Russell loved people, and people, quite frankly, loved Russell. But it wasn't always easy for him. And Emily, like a lot of FFA members in the country, myself and my team included, struggled with the news of being taken off the road. And we were unsure of what the rest of the year would look like. Every real moment has been building upon the last and leading up to today, the first ever virtual National FFA Convention and Expo. And boy, have we been humbled this year, huh? We have missed out on a lot. That's the reality of it. We've missed out on sports and graduations, family gatherings. Some of us might have missed out on jobs. But if there's anything that we have learned through the pain and the discomfort, is that we did learn. And maybe, just maybe, we can still be better for it. In the same way that it is humble to recognize our strengths, it's humble to recognize what we are in need of too. And perhaps this was the year that we needed. The year that we became more understanding, because somewhere along the line, we were in need of some understanding. The year we became more compassionate because we were in need of some compassion. The year we became more loving because we said somewhere along the line, you know what, I'm in need of some love right now. The year that we became forgiving because the reality is we are all in need of a little forgiveness from time to time. These have been the most humbling 6 years of my life in this organization. But it doesn't have to stop there for me, and it doesn't have to stop here for you. We can continue to take what we are innately good at, to use our strengths as a means to love and serve the people around us, to meet them wherever they might be, to live out humility, and be known for who we really are.
Empty